Serious. Has a friend ever said something that just straight up ended the friendship? What happened? Story 1. Friend had physically harmed another friend who was drunk because he thought nobody would notice. Next day I confronted him, and after looking in my eyes and denying what I had seen for 30 minutes, it was like his mask came off. I have never understood the descriptions of the coldness of eyes until that moment. He just looked at me, smiled, and said, "Honestly, I just don't care. We are no longer friends." Everyone else eventually figures out that he was batshit and takes a step back. He checks into a psych ward for 3 days, but keeps the admittance bracelet on for the next 3 weeks. Tells everyone he talks to, using my name, about this bad person who destroyed his life and caused him to attempt suicide. Don't be friends with psychopaths, kids. If they have alienated everyone they ever knew, the common denominator is them. Edit. Okay, putting this here. I'm new to Reddit and just got kicked off another subreddit for not using asterisks in curse words. Didn't know that wasn't standard Reddit procedure. To all of you who were kindly pointing this out, thank you. I have learned a lot about formatting today in general and appreciate the help. To all of you who got weirdly aggressive about it, you guys should really get a hobby. Fact, y'all. Story 2. An ex-friend of mine was pushing me for inappropriate images under the flimsy guise of joking, seemingly out of nowhere. I was in a 3-year relationship with my now husband, and this ex-friend of mine also had a GF of his own during this whole ordeal. Real classy. Now, this wasn't really something he had done previously in all our years knowing one another. So with that in mind, I foolishly tried to give him the benefit of the doubt and just made it unmistakably clear to him that if he didn't stop behaving like a mindless pervert, I'd cut contact and end our friendship. Then one day I got an image text. It was his boner outlined in gym shorts and a sad and completely see-through fish for compliments, then the most pathetic backpedal of the century. Friendship of 10+ years ended, but not before I flipping laid into him first before blocking that toxic predator's peach. Fudge you, Lyle. Story 3. My best friend accused me of making him boy. No joke. He was in the closet when I met him, and throughout our years of friendship, I tried my best to show love and support to him during his gradual coming out process. He came from a conservative family and really resisted coming out. When he finally came to terms with his close relationship orientation, I guess he convinced himself somehow that I was the one who planted that seed of homosexuality in his mind and corrupted him. When he yelled at me in tears, "You made me boy," I couldn't believe that he was serious. I was willing to forgive because I knew it wasn't really about me, but from that day on, he began pushing me away and treating me like cow. After putting up with the abusive and toxic behavior for months, I eventually told him that I was done, moved out, and never spoke to him again. Years later, he emailed me an apology. I have nothing but love for him, and part of me still grieves because he was like a brother to me, but I haven't tried to rekindle the friendship. Story 4. Yes. For some background, I was best friends with this girl, let's call her Alice. For several years, I had just ended a relationship with a guy that through the course of our 5-year relationship developed an addiction to opioids that ultimately resulted in our painful breakup, and I'm bi. Anyway, I started dating a woman I met through Alice. Alice was becoming increasingly territorial, even before I started hanging out with this woman. Eventually, we became more serious, and Alice called my girlfriend and told her that I'd said she was just some sapphic that was obsessed with me about my girlfriend. These words have never and would never leave my mouth. It was just Alice's attempt at sabotaging our relationship. Fortunately, my girlfriend knew better and called me immediately, and I was able to fix the situation and right the wrong. However, my friendship with Alice was absolutely done as soon as I knew this. Side note. Alice Hayes since completely ruined multiple other friendships within our friend group because of her deceit and mistreatment of people. It's the most vivid example of karma I can think of. Edit. Words. Story 5. When I realized how unhealthy our relationship was, I didn't have enough experience at the time to pick up in the fact that she expected me to pay attention to her to the same extent a romantic partner might. Not the same behavior per se, but the same level of communication, support, etc. I also didn't realize how controlling she was. I'd get accused of not texting enough, not responding to every point brought up in paragraphs of text, not complimenting things right, etc. Things had been cooling between us. I was actually forming healthy relationships with friends and a new partner, and I ended up explicitly cutting ties with her when I told her I was hurt, and all she could do was respond, "Sorry, but here's what I think you did wrong." Paraphrasing, but 1 paragraph of apology and 2 paragraphs of outlining my apparent misdeeds painted a pretty clear picture. Story 6. I was gaming with my best friend, and my wife was sitting on the couch next to me just reading a book. She was super content just letting me game. She just wanted to be spending time with me. My friend had a not even 1-year-old kid that he just stuck in a bouncing chair in the side of the room while we played. He said the kid loves that chair and is in it a lot, so he just games. The kid starts whining a bit, but he gets ignored. I'm thinking we'll probably hit this checkpoint and he'll go tend to his kid. Nope. Several good stopping points had passed, and the kid was fussing even more now. So my buddy says to my wife, Washi, my wife's name, "There's formula in the cupboard, and the diaper bag is over in the corner there. He's probably just hungry and has a poopy diaper if you want to feed and change him." I looked at this guy like he'd just slapped her, turned my game off, and said, "How about instead of asking my wife to do it, you put down your game and take care of your own child?" A bit of a harsh response, but he looked so butthurt that I'd just told him to take care of his own child instead of game all day. I packed my stuff up and we left. I haven't spoken to him in 3 years. Story 7. Someone said I should put a trigger warning assault, and this is pretty heavy, so buckle up. This is a throwaway account for what will soon be obvious, I hope. Last year, my friend met this girl that he really liked and asked her out. I didn't really like her, but she seemed nice enough. A couple months later, I found out that they had close relationship. A little surprising, but not a super huge deal. She starts acting super paranoid. If someone even brushes against her, she flips the fudge out. She avoids him. I learned that she wanted nothing to do with close relationship, and he forced himself upon her. He hunts her down, and without me initially knowing, threatens her and assaults her again. My group of friends eventually helped her out of the situation and into counseling. She still has many problems because of it. I want nothing to do with my former friend and have grown to hate him. I cut off all ties. Sometimes he still tries to talk to me, but I refuse and have told him why. The only reason he isn't in jail is because the girl has all the evidence and refuses to distribute it. He has tried to guilt her into other favors and threatened to end her if she tells anyone or bothers him, even though he is the one who bothers her. Story 8. My husband had a best friend. Been friends for over a decade. He asked his best friend to be his best man at our wedding. He agreed. Then at 2 weeks before our wedding, he asked if he could bring a date. We were puzzled as we didn't think he'd been dating anyone. So we inquired and were like, sure. Turns out it was one of our mutual friends' wife he was banging. We all hated her anyway, but him wanting to bring her as his date was the end for my husband. The friend said that not only would he not be the best man, but he wouldn't come to the wedding if he couldn't bring the friend's wife he was cheating with. Yep, that was a big nope. They haven't been friends since. I had a friend that I ended things with because she said, "Your problem is you have too much humanity. You care about people too much." I asked her if she cared at all about her fellow human beings, and she said, "Don't know them. Fudge them. Why do you think I carry a gun?" We were in a heated discussion, and I had to take a breather. The absolute look of triumph and joy on her face that she had because she broke me, to the point that to step away, was enough for me. So it wasn't so much what she said, but the fact that she was so genuinely happy that she hurt me so badly. Her look was like, "Gotcha, bad person." I won the argument. The fact that her winning was more important than our friendship and trying to see each other's point of view was it for me. She was no one I wanted to know. She admitted to me when we first became friends that she doesn't have empathy or compassion. I should have listened. I just thought she was being hard on herself. Nope. Story 9. I was friends with my best friend from when I was 7 until right around when I graduated from college. He was incredible at what he did, and he ended up with a high-paying job right out of college, top 10 university in his field, and he graduated with a 3.9 GPA, magna cum laude. He was a completely normal dude when I knew him, with very loving parents and siblings. Totally ordinary guy. Right after he graduated, he just didn't know how to handle his money. He started spending money on escort services weekly and trying harder and harder suites over the course of the first year after his college graduation. In the end, he was addicted to Molly and opiates. We grew further apart due to his habits around this time, and I found out that he took his own life shortly before I moved overseas. Shot himself in the head. Story 10. Had an intervention between a couple who were also my friends. The girl literally said that she was dating the guy for convenience and thought it was okay to, 1, say that it was his fault that he got fired from his mother's workplace after she instigated him. 2, talk cow on his recently deceased grandmother who raised him. 3, compare him with her ex-boyfriend, and a lot more. Stopped talking to her ever since, despite living in the same house as her for a couple more months. Even after hearing that, the boyfriend didn't break up with her until the end of the school year. He started dating a new girl, who is friends with my boyfriend, and then proceeded to cheat on her. Immediately dumped him as a friend as well. Can't believe I lived with these two bozos. The only good thing to come out of that friendship is my current boyfriend, who they introduced to me. Story 11? Yep, had it a few times actually. One was a mistake. First time was a mate who stole off me. Had about 2/300ths in pokey tokens, $2 coins won from a slot machine. Him and one of my two oldest mates who happened to be my boss were the only ones who went to visit me and checked in my room. The mate I knew for longer told me he didn't nick it, and the other one mysteriously came into a little money. What I didn't find out till half a decade later was it was the workmate who set him up. Years later, after having a little trouble finding a job, I got our version of JobLink to call my references. He gave me the worst one you could think of, which was more than a little confusing to me at the time. So I started checking him out. Turned out he had a crush on someone I had a 15-year-long on-off thing with, and thought if I was jobless, she wouldn't want to be with me anymore. All revealed when he tried to tag along to her trip to Bali. Let's just say she wasn't having it. After checking out a few more things, I found out he was a major cow stirrer in our group. The last one was a few years after that. A mate was starting to have mental health issues after getting married and having a baby to someone he wasn't really suited for. I walked away the moment he drunkenly pulled a gun on me after he threatened another mutual friend with a knife for, get this, saying yes, and participating in the close relationship with him and his wife. So once because I messed up and believed the wrong person, and twice more because of the people themselves. Story 12. Not just *** friendship, but multiple. I was part of a decent-sized friend circle. Everyone hung out and knew each other. A couple of them decided to invite Unpleasant Person to hang out with us. Unpleasant Person started openly insulting one friend to his face for being a homosexual. My girlfriend, God bless her for this, was the first person to stand up for boyfriend. Unpleasant Person gets all huffy, won't apologize, and leaves. Friends started getting rude with her, myself, and boyfriend. They blamed the three of us for creating drama, me for backing up both of them. Boyfriend stopped hanging out with everyone because it was clear they were siding with Unpleasant Person. When we're all hanging out again, who should show up this time but Unpleasant Person, with his friend we'll call Pervert. Pervert keeps making disgusting remarks to girlfriend while giving me a look like he's challenging me. Girlfriend tells him to fudge off after he starts going on about what he'd do to her if he found her in a dark alley. We both leave. One friend texts me later telling both of us to never hang out with the group again. The rest of them start ghosting us. Then the stalking started. They'd show up in groups to places they knew girlfriend and I would be at. Unpleasant Person, Pervert, and the whole crew. They wouldn't say anything to us, just barge in, sit nearby, and make themselves as loud and disruptive as possible. That behavior ended up getting them banned from most local places after too many people complained. About a year later, one of the former friends contacted us when he was drunk, lonely, and feeling guilty. Friend group fell apart shortly after they got banned from local places we'd hang out at. People blamed each other for escalating. Everything was non-stop drama. People started picking sides and factionalizing. And it finally fell apart with all of them hating each other. Unpleasant Person moved away, Pervert was in jail. Girlfriend and I pretty much told him to go pound sand. Story 13. Helped a girl who was going through a very, very, very bad time when she was 15 and I was 17. Gave her a room at my house, fed her, made sure she went to school, nearly lost all my old friends making sure this girl was safe. Still don't really speak to them. Over the years, we've had disagreements. More terrible things happened to her, and I also moved country so I could work and sort out my own mental issues. I've held in my mental issues for longer than I've known this woman. I didn't want to worry or upset her in case she felt it was her fault. It definitely wasn't. I moved back to where I used to last year to help my father, who was seriously ill, and to help her. The last month or two, my mental state has deteriorated massively. Dark thoughts, emotions becoming very unstable, extreme loneliness, etc. I asked my friend if I could speak to her about how I felt. I sent 2 messages about it and got the replies, "I can't deal with this," and "You're so pushy, I hate it, you're my friend." Told me she'll text me when she feels like it. My only real friend of the past 5 years, who I'll admit I love her like a sister and would blindly support her no matter what, no longer talks to me because I've been struggling with mental issues and asked if I could talk to her. Story 14. I was going through some cow and needed to be talked down from suicide one night. I told my friend I really needed help and someone to talk to. She said, "I'm really not up for that right now." "You're on your own." I listened to this woman rant about her money troubles and helped her out. The one time I need some help, that took a lot in me to ask for. I get a selfish, sorry bad person. Not my job. I haven't talked to her in 7 years, and she can still go fudge herself. On the brighter side, I was too flipping mad at her to terminate myself that night. Edit, thank you for the gold kind, stranger. Edit 2, I didn't tell her I was to the sky. I kept that part to myself. I just told her I needed someone to talk to because of my anxiety and depression were really flipping with me, and please don't leave me alone. I really needed to just be told everything was all right. She wanted to watch TV and not talk me and for me to get over it. And it wasn't her job to hold my hand. Hope that clears it up. Story 15. So in my college days, I had the opportunity to try acid. I took it, and then my roommate, who was already on thin ice with me, got jealous and started yelling and berating me because I didn't invite him to do it with me. Mind you, he said he doesn't want to try it. Months down the road, he finally got a hold of acid and was asking my advice about it. I told him it was okay, but I almost had a bad trip because he ruined the vibes. He then said, "Yeah, I thought maybe I shouldn't scream at you and ruin your trip, but I didn't care enough." I stopped talking to him after graduation. Edit. Words are hard. Story 16. I disclosed to her that I'd been pressured into close relationship work by an abusive partner some years previously. No details, just that exact phrase, pressured into close relationship work. I said it calmly, and it had come up naturally in the conversation. She took that opportunity to pry for details on what funds and fluids were exchanged, and then told me I wasn't really pressured into close relationship work. I asked her to stop. She was the first person I'd ever told this to, and I was really hurt. She doubled down, saying she didn't see why she was wrong when I was just making light of people who'd actually been trafficked and stuff. Things had been rocky before, but I really wanted to make the friendship work, such that I took a vacation and flew halfway across the country to visit. I stuck it out the rest of the vacation, but honestly, I should have just turned the car around then, gotten my stuff, and flown back home early. Fudge you, Audrey. When a friend discloses something personal and painful, you support them. Be skeptical if you want to, but you don't get to flipping argue about the validity of their trauma. Story 17. I have a story that I don't really like to talk about. This has been a recent event in my life and is serious. My friend that I am no longer friends with is someone that I have known for years. We are neighbors and practically grew up together. He was a relatively normal person and had good morals up until he was introduced to social media. He used YOLO on Snapchat as well as Instagram. He mainly used Snapchat and YOLO. At this time, his parents were typically not home or helping with taking care of the recent baby brother he received, so he had plenty of free time, and that free time he used to post YOLOs. Before he used social media, he was really into the Joker for some odd reason. He'd act like the character for no reason and act strange towards strangers and PPL he knew. He even acted that way towards his girlfriend. He ended up losing her because he was acting oddly towards her. All whilst this was happening, he was saying horrifying things on Snapchat. I thought that what he was posting was very disturbing, and I got tired of it. He also threatened to terminate people and hurt people. I ended up taking screenshots of what he was posting and showed the school administration to see if they could help him. He ended up getting suspended for a substantial amount of time, and thankfully stopped what he was doing. I am not longer his friend because I can't take any chances of him finding out and hurting me. Story 18. Had a friend, C, that constantly borrowed money from me in high school and never once paid me back. She'd promised to pay me back each time and give me, whole stories about how she'd pay me back as soon as she got her allowance on Wednesday or whatever. And then if I asked for the money back later, she'd claim she'd already paid me back. Her begging got so bad that I literally stopped carrying cash with me to school because if I stood up and she heard change jiggling in my pocket, she'd beg for an hour to borrow money until I lent her some. God forbid if she noticed I'd bought myself a snack or anything. Anyways, the friendship had mostly ended by the next year, just because, as it turns out, she was a pretty poor friend all around and we were fighting about something, but I guess I was still sort of holding out hope for it in some way or another. A mutual friend, R, asked me if I could talk to C because she'd borrowed a favorite belt and some money and R wanted it back, and my locker was right beside C's. I told R that it was probably gone, but I'd ask anyways. Asked about R's money and belt. I still remember C's response. I only repay friends. Any thought I'd ever had that this might be a redeemable friendship went out the window. Told R what was said, offered to pay them back myself, but I was never speaking to C again. And never did. 4 years of friendship over in that sentence, because it meant that she had never once considered me a friend, just a source of money. Story 19. I was very close with D from 5th grade on. Our lives had very different paths. I had a supportive family and did well in school, so I went on to college far away. She dropped out of high school and started working. I was there when she met her first husband, was there through her pregnancy, and was there through her traumatic divorce. I listened through her bad decisions and rebounds that followed. I worked hard and saved money and liked to spend it on travel. I was on vacation with a mutual friend, C. D sent me a 3-page email detailing all the ways I had betrayed her and was a bad friend, particularly by going on this vacation and other trips I had gone on. I was so upset, and then C pointed out how she didn't get any kind of message like that from D. That made me consider. I sent her a reply email that I was sorry she felt that way, that I did not feel the same, and wished her well. Then I blocked her, and I haven't spoken to her since. I don't regret it. Story 20. My best friend in college was a girl named Gina. She and I got along really well and would get drunk and have awesome, deep conversations, so everything together, explore, etc. Natural college cow when you're experiencing the world on your own for once. She liked sweets and tripping and living in shared communities with people she felt were deep. I liked drinking and partying and having my own apartment room bathroom. I personally think nothing is wrong with either preference. She goes off to get a law degree in a city about 3 hours away. I begin working as a chemical engineer in our college town. We stay in touch, but I know she's busy with school, no big deal. I visit her a few times, but she never comes down to me. Didn't really have a problem with it at the time, but after the fact noticed. She comes back for a summer internship. I text her and call her and go out of my way to take her to happy hour at high-end cocktail bars she picks, to dinner at trendy restaurants, etc. I pay for everything as I'm the one with the job. No problem, I make plenty of money. But every time we meet up, it's her complaining for 2-3 hours about drama or school or whatever, and I can't get a word in. I'm always asking for her to hang out. She's always prioritizing some boy one month, another boy the next. One time I'm out with other friends at the bar, it was a birthday, and we got extra done up. I was feeling great, had some cute fake lashes on, cute dress, and ran into her. Overheard her telling my boyfriend, now husband, that she didn't want to hang around because I had fake lashes on, so I must be blacked out drunk. Was not. There is nothing wrong with putting a little more effort than normal and feeling beautiful, ever so fudge her. Finally, I get tired of making all the effort. I step back and decide I'll wait for her to ask me to hang out. She ends up moving back to finish her law degree at the college we went to together, in the town I live in. 6 months go by and I get a single text saying, "Hey, are you mad at me? My sister was being crazy last time we hung out. Do you have any hot friends that might be interested in close relationship with me?" No strings attached. I never responded. Never spoke to her again. Been about 3-4 years now. Am still really sad about it. I thought we had a great friendship, but I valued her much more than she valued me. Story 21. A second best friend from college. I moved away for a year, and my best friend and boyfriend lived in the same town while I was gone. They came to visit, they drove up together, we all had a great time. I came down to visit, we had a great time. Then I move back, get a promotion, boyfriend proposes, buy a house, etc. All in about 3 months. And boom, this girl never wants to speak to me again. She tells me she hopes I'm happy with him and refuses to sit down and talk to me about it. I reach out and try to explain I'm hurt and I miss her. Get pretty plain responses about no thanks, hope you're happy with your life. I was pretty heartbroken. But looking back, it was obvious she was jealous of other people's happiness. She was always complaining about her work, how she can't afford her apartment, always cycling through boyfriends and heartbroken she couldn't find someone to love her, and always talking trash about any of our friends' success. I realized this was just too much all at once and she hated me for it. She trash-talked our mutual friend getting into a Stanford master's program. She trash-talked our mutual friend who got a great job in San Francisco. She trash-talked her friend who got up and moved across the world for a boy and a lavish life in Ireland. Straight movie style, no joke, haha. She trash-talked her sister's fitness Instagram success, which became a crazy empire, so go her. She's killing it. In the end, it's obvious she feels a lot of competition with those in her life, and I'll never understand that. Story 22. When I saw my friend Juan chase after someone with a knife because of some gang cow he was getting involved in. I had known him ever since I was in kindergarten, and we were really close growing up. We were kind of the outcasts of our class, the dorky kids who always got good grades, along with our other friend Nick. We did things like draw this comic together about this guy named Tom, where each of us one do 3-part panel, and we would trade off the notebook continuing the story. It was fun to us, and I wish I still had that notebook, but it got taken from us in the 4th grade and was never given back. Juan and I had sleepovers pretty much every weekend since we lived somewhat close to each other, and he always joined me for my family camping trips every summer. I was an only child, and he was a bit like a brother to me. Then a bunch of us were transferred out of our grade school by our parents in the 6th grade because they were unhappy with the administration and felt we could learn better elsewhere. Even though I lived on the south side of Chicago, I ended up in a school on the north side with another friend of mine, Manny, while Juan ended up going to a school closer to his house. Juan and I still hung out sometimes, but we started drifting apart more and more. I could tell his new school was changing him, and by 8th grade, he was part of a local crew. At the time, I was really into graffiti and rap, so even though things were changing, we still found things we had in common. The last time I saw him, I was at his graduation party. After the whole family thing was over, we were hanging out with some of his friends from the neighborhood to breathe some candy. Then Juan and I decided to go for a walk. I had a backpack full of spray paint, so we went to the train tracks by his house to hit up some trains and walls. I put up my name and he put up his gang's tags. As we are bombing this one wall, we hear a voice from below. There is some guy yelling up at us. I don't remember what he said, but it really pissed Juan off. I had never seen him like this before. He was like a completely different person. He started running after this guy, and out of instinct, I just followed after him. The other guy bolted, and he chased after him, and I chased after him. After a few minutes, he lost him and stopped, and I was finally able to catch up to him. He still had that crazy, angry look in his eye, but then I also noticed he had a knife in his hand. It was then I realized that this wasn't the Juan I grew up with. He started talking about getting a couple of other people to find the guy. Apparently they had some beef with him, which is why he was so angry. I convinced him to let it go for now and go back and breathe some more candy to chill out. We did, and I crashed at his house, just as I had done for so many years. But after that night, I wanted nothing to do with the lifestyle he was getting involved in, and even though we still talked on the phone sometimes, we never hung out again after that. After we started high school, we lost touch completely. I still thought of him a lot and wondered whatever happened to him. So I would Google Facebook, search him sometimes, but never had any results. Until a few years ago when I finally found him after using his middle name in a search. There were about 6 or 7 different mugshots from his various visits to county jail, mostly on candy possession charges. It made me sad because he was such a smart guy, but at the same time I was glad I didn't go down the same path. It's one of my favorite trips we took together and the way I prefer to remember him. Story 23. I was out at a bar with some friends. A guy shows up at the bar that makes one of my friends, let's call her Anne, uncomfortable. There's bad history between the guy and Anne that really isn't my business to share, but she had recently filed a police report against him. When Anne sees him, she is clearly upset and hides in the bathroom. One of my other friends talks to the bouncer and gets the guy kicked out. Now here's the poor part. One of our other friends, Sarah, starts loudly telling the table how much Anne was overreacting and that it was unfair that the guy got kicked out. I was appalled and drunk and walked away from the situation. The next day I texted Sarah and told her that I really wasn't okay with what she had said and tried to explain how problematic it was. She refused to apologize, continued to victim blame, and then once we all stopped talking to her, she texted Anne and blamed her for ruining her year, blocked and deleted her info. Story 24. My junior year of high school, I was going through a tough breakup. He called me in the middle of the night to break up with me as I was half asleep. Obviously, I was distraught, so I called my best friend. She came over and picked me up and brought me to her house. Her boyfriend was there as well. As I was a blubbering mess, she was giving me things to eat, candy, chips, etc. Little did I know, some of the candy was actually edibles. She estimated I ate about 150 g on a nearly empty stomach. I had never tried candy before, so when my stomach started feeling hot and my mouth really dry and cottony, I was pretty weirded out. Then I couldn't even produce tears, my eyes were so dry. At one point, I got so hot I tried taking my socks off, but it felt like my feet were miles away. And then I puked all over myself on her dad's recliner. She refused to help clean me up, and I was barely putting together a cohesive thought. It was her boyfriend that took me to the bathroom and helped clean me up and change me into a pair of her clothes. I remember hearing them arguing as I had my head over the toilet, and it felt like 1 second was hours and hours were only a second. I could see the sound waves from them talking. It was definitely a fun trip. When her parents got home, she told them she found me on the side of the road super drunk and, like a good Samaritan, decided to bring me to her house. When her BF went home, she put me in the bathtub and left me all alone. I remember waking up to her mom screaming because I had fallen asleep and was nearly submerged and could have drowned. Finally, the next morning, her parents made me a protein shake and toast and promised not to tell my parents I raided their alcohol cabinet as long as it didn't happen again. I left and promptly ghosted her. I stayed in contact with her BF, though, and made sure he knew I was grateful he was there that night. But yeah, worst trip I've ever had. Story 25. I've posted this elsewhere, but it's relevant. I met Lisa at university doing our master degree. When we met, she lived in the inner city, as did I. We hung out a lot as we had a mutual love of good food and too much wine. Then she got pregnant and moved out to the burbs. It took me nearly 2 HRs to get to her new place on public transport, longer on weekends, as I don't have a car because ... inner city living. But still, I consistently go to visit her. Birthdays, dinners, baby shower, baby parties, just to hang out, babysat a couple of times. Sometimes I stayed the night, but mostly I came home. She never came my way anymore as she was a single mother, so her flexibility during pregnancy, and especially with a newborn, was limited. Then one night, I missed the last tram home by about 3 seconds and got stuck in the middle of a sketchy area for a while, very late at night, around 1:45 a.m., until my Uber arrived. The Uber trip home cost me over $100, which is why I kept using public transport. I made a joke about it the next morning. We had a laugh. I thought nothing of it. Went to a few more events at her place after that. Then she messages me one night specifically to tell me that I'm not invited to her birthday dinner that weekend and was no longer welcome at any of her events until I had an alternative method of transport. Apparently, me getting home was causing her massive stress. First, I'd heard of it, and she was sick of me shutting down her ideas. Again, first I'd heard of it, we'd literally never talked about it before. She told me I was welcome to discuss it more if I wanted, but she hoped she understood why I wasn't welcome at her house any longer. This was in May 2018. I never responded, and we haven't spoken since. She's made no attempt to contact me. I didn't respond because her birthday dinner had been planned for a couple of weeks, so she had plenty of time to speak with me about her concerns and reach a resolution rather than just telling me I'm no longer welcome at any event. The first I knew there was any issue was this message. Story 26. Yeah, I had a friend who I met clubbing and only really had a friendship with because we went to the same nightclubs. We went out for coffee once day and there was a noisy child screaming away at a nearby table. She made a derogatory comment about the child being mixed race and how she didn't agree with mixed race relationships. Up until this point, I'd not seen anything like that from her at all, and I pointed out that my then boyfriend, now husband, was mixed race and I wasn't happy with her comment. She responded with, "Yeah, but husband can pass for white, so it's fine." I made my excuses and left and ignored her messages of, "Are you out tonight?" after that. She did pop up on social media a few years later when Facebook started, and I had a nose on her profile out of morbid curiosity and wasn't shocked to see she was an active member of the EDL. Story 27. I worked in a restaurant with my best friend, I will call her E, and she was engaged to her boyfriend of 5+ years. We met this guy at work, I will call him H, and E would not stop talking about how much H was into me. E invited H to my house to set us up and play matchmaker. He kept pressuring me close relationship with H, and I was obviously not going to do that since neither of us knew him too well, and so I went to bed. E ended up having close relationship with H in my backyard, and everyone heard it. When I called her out, E tried to tell me that H assaulted her and threatened to spread horrible rumors about me if I told her fiancé. I didn't tell her fiancé. I cut her off, and she proceeded to still spread the rumors about me. I got her fired and escorted off property by police for threatening me. Story 28. Flip side, a friend of mine used to hang out with me at my parents' place all the time, nearly day after school. Consequently, he would get invited to hang with my family at dinner events and get-togethers. One day, seeing things about the situation that was wrong, pulled him aside to speak privately, which obviously started tension in the room. Turns out he was in a rather neglectful and hateful, but not quite physically abusive family. They didn't let him go hungry or freeze on the streets, but a parental love? Too much for them. That day, my mother and father began adoption procedures, and he was no longer a friend, but a brother. 12 years later, and this brother of mine is loved by my whole extended family. Lost a friend, but he became a brother instead. Story 29. I had a longtime friend who was in an unhappy situation. He lived at home and had just been laid off of a job he loved. He was pretty unhappy. The problem was that he was a bad person about it. He had no education and was incredibly unhealthy, but would not accept a position for under $60K a year starting. I'd find something close to his home that was near that pay, and he would turn it down. He was just a banana all the time, and I tried to be patient. I have this rule with all my friends. If you're rude to me, then whatever. But if you're in my home and you're rude to my other guests to an unreasonable degree, then we are done. He made the mistake of taking his attitude and sniping constantly at my other friend and my wife. At the end of the evening, I just never contacted him again. I never said anything, I just dropped the friendship and moved on. It's been 3 years, and if I've heard truthfully from others, he is still unemployed and still lives with his mom. Story 30. I live in a small town. One of my employees is transgender and is self-conscious about small-town folks staring at her and saying cow. A friend of mine saw me at lunch with her, and I introduced them. A few weeks later, I saw my friend at another community function where he brought up my trans employee and said a bunch of disparaging things about her. I didn't make a big deal of it, but I have stopped asking my ex-friend to hang out and always turned down invitations to hang out. When I was a kid, I was different, and I want nothing to do with people who disparage people just for being different. Story 31. We had been the best friends for over 15 years, did everything together. She had been pulling stunts for a while, but I always forgave her because she had it rough with her parents during our teen years. In our mid-20s, a friend we knew our whole childhood passed away suddenly. He was more like a big brother to me and was my brother's best friend. It shocked my whole family that she was quite close to. It was an extremely hard time as he passed away so young. The funeral came and went and she never turned up, texted, nothing. A week later, I got a text saying phone passed away, so upset about last week. How's you? I just couldn't respond and explain how poor everything about that text was, so I didn't reply. It became clearer that I had made the right decision of cutting her off when my parents and brother ended up in the hospital the few months after the funeral for a series of crazy incidents all unrelated to each other. New and old friends came out of nowhere to help me, but she never turned up for any of my family. It's been 6 years, and honestly the best decision I have ever made for myself. Story 32. Had a dude I was friends with in the military. Pretty cool guy, looked out for everyone, tried to take care of everyone. He was all around a great guy. Right up until you get him talking about women. As soon as he starts talking about females, he turns into the most downright misogynist pig I've ever met. As a guy, I can understand some talking and elaborating when it comes to the other gender, but the things he would say makes people downright uncomfortable and are conversation stoppers. He had been told multiple times about it, warned, and it still didn't stop. The worst part? He was married and continues to be. Don't worry. He cheats on her with as many females as he can find. Hard no in my book. Story 33. A guy I considered my friend and crush once told me he wouldn't care if I passed away. Needless to say, I was heartbroken. Edit, thank you kind strangers for your words. To those of you wondering about the context, here it is. I posted about it the other day because I'm just now coming to terms with it. So, I used to be a nice girl. I had a minute-long crush on any guy who would give me attention, and I was super emo and angsty, partially because of a difficult home life. I was clingy with my friends and really socially awkward. I'll be me. And the guy can be N for nice guy. Our school guidance counselor will be GC. We were both 15. N was a band geek, obsessed with the girls in color guard and the one girl in his band group. While I was more of a shy, nice girl who mostly got her feelings out with punk music, N was very extroverted, saying he loved being constantly surrounded by beautiful women of the color guard who loved me, and often gave girls, including me for a time, unsolicited, very tight hugs all the time. He was no catch, but I was looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. All of our mutual friends knew that I liked him by this point, and they had all encouraged me to just go for it already. I had come out to N about liking him the day before, and I'd had this overwhelming crush on him for over a year by then. I was devastated by this. I had our first date built up in my head and a consuming idea of what a happy couple we would be like together. He gave me an honest answer, and I can respect that now. But I didn't want to take no for an answer back when I was a moronic 15-year-old. It was at the beginning of lunch, and no one else had sat down at our friend table yet. I sat down in my usual seat next to N, and he started talking to me like nothing had happened the day prior. I refused to act like nothing had happened and confronted him. I pretty much went off on him about how I would be great for him, very nice girl, and said something along the lines of, I can't keep living like this, being just your friend. He replied, then don't live. I don't care. My face went red, and I ran into the bathroom to cry. I thought I loved him in my 15-year-old head because he could make me feel normal. When he told me that, I took it as him telling me to terminate myself and began a downward spiral where I actually wanted to for years. N and someone I thought was my friend began to bully me after that, saying I was not welcome and that I was a loser. I heard through the grapevine that he called me a crazy bad person stalker girl at one point. We were all in the same honors classes, of which there was only one of each small school, so there was nothing I could do about it unless I wanted to completely change the trajectory of my school life and drop honors. Here's where the story takes a major twist. N's mom was friends with the school's only guidance counselor, who was in charge of making class schedules and taking charge with problem children who were at risk with sweets or violence. One day I was walking quickly behind N apparently, so I could put my stuff down in class and go to the bathroom like I always did at this time of day. GC called my dad without me knowing and called him to the office for a meeting with the entire school's administration staff. My dad took off work and went to the school, thinking that my newfound reclusive behavior may have been a sign that I was getting into sweets, and the school was worried. Instead, my dad went through what he described to me as a circular conversation with GC and the rest of the administration. He was instructed not to tell me this, but he did anyway. The people told my father that he had to shut me up and make me leave N alone. They said that I was causing trouble for one of their brighter and more popular students, and that they had school cam footage they would present to the police of me stalking him through the halls if they had to. Since that infamous I don't care day, I have been hospitalized 3 times for attempted suicide. I had gone off the deep end, almost hurting N during a horrible panic attack. I had cried openly in front of people I barely knew in school. N and one of our mutual friends started bullying me, and I eventually had to move towns and change schools because it wasn't going to stop. I have one friend that I still talk to from that school. The others I tried to talk to afterward, but it didn't really work out. I have since gone through an underage drinking phase and a hoe phase, both of which I have gotten over entirely. I will probably be on anti-anxiety medication for the rest of my life, but I have since found religion and made peace with myself over what happened. I have forgiven N, and I think the final part of that was writing out the main details and posting. So thank you. And that's what happens when a nice girl likes a nice guy. They're both immature and pretty terrible. But things aren't all bad. That friend I mentioned that I keep up with, we've been dating for over a year now, and we told each other that we love one another for the first time just last week. Edit 1. Feel free to ask me any questions for clarity. Sorry, I forgot to mention that in the first place. Edit 2. Feel free to ask me questions does not mean tell me off or say that this was all my fault in the comments. I understand and have come to terms with the fact that I did wrong and could have handled myself better in the situation. So telling me that I was the only one in the wrong, that I deserved all that happened to me, or that I corned N will not fly. Thank you. Story 34. Had a friend in high school who was nothing short of an abusive bully, prone to constant insults and frequent bursts of violence towards all the guys in the friend group. Really, he was a bad friend, but other people in the group had known him for years, and I was pretty new to the group, so I just let it roll off like everyone else did. One of his favorite insults towards me was to call me a rainbow Nazi, because he thought calling someone boy was a funny insult, and I have blonde hair and blue eyes. About a year out of high school, I'm crashing with one of the friends, the group's driver, basically. I'd had a long day at work, finally clock out, walk to my car, and find I have 2 flat tires. I managed to limp my car to a park and ride where I could leave it overnight. Called the friend I was living with for a ride, and he was weirdly already at the park and ride with the bully friend and a couple other friends. I was too exhausted to ask about it. They took me home, and then all of them left again. When they got back, bully friend revealed that he had purchased a rainbow pride sticker, cut it into the shape of a swastika, and slapped it on my bumper while I was at work. They had all been at the park and ride because they had followed me from work, where they had been watching in case the bully's joke caused me any violent trouble. But even that much had been done only because my other friends had insisted. They recognized the prank as dangerous but didn't stop the bully. The bully apologized for my 2 spiked tires, which, yes, had been spiked. But he thought it was hilarious. A great take on his rainbow Nazi gag. So I moved home to my family the next day and basically just stopped hanging out with whole group entirely. Things rolled around to where he tried to reconnect with us and the rest of the group, who eventually pushed him out, twice. But none of us wanted anything to do with him. He was still an unpleasant person both times and years later. Story 35. This dude from my college say he needed to go to a pharmacy. I knew where the closest one was, and I decided to take him there. On the way, he was going on about how his GF was sick and her immunity was on a low, so she told him to take medication against an STD he had. I stop and ask, "You have an STD and don't take stuff on a regular basis?" He said, "It is okay, I have a really good immune system," and just went on. He was the type of guy that boast about how many women he sleeps with. I started pressing him about the girls he said he had been with. He basically admitted to knowingly passing on an STD. The more I told him he was on the wrong, more and more he tried to play cool, like, no, you got it all wrong, but it was too late. I can't even look at him today without feeling disgusted.